Welcome back to my channel, JDJ Planet, and to my podcast, God is an Artist. Aren't these so cute? Look at these. I am obsessed with making these, and I'm probably going to make them forever. So if you would like to come to the creative spot on Friday or any day, because by the time you see this, Friday will be past. But this craft is available to make at the creative spot. And honestly, it's just really easy to do. I'll put it here. So, but yeah, I mean, while I sit here and make this, I have a tutorial posted on my TikTok. And if you come to the creative spot, I'll teach you step by step how to make one. But I'm just going to sit here and make another one while I am obsessed and talk about what we're doing this month. So this month and next month, May, we celebrate Mother's Day. And June, we celebrate Father's Day. So that is going to kind of set the stage for these next 8 weeks. Going to talk about parenthood. Going to talk about how did God design parenthood? How did God design motherhood? And how should those things function, right? You know, we'll get into the word. Of course, we know the famous verse, everyone's favorite verse, right? What's that? I haven't even read it, but what's that? Beat the child, spare the rod, right? You know, it's their favorite verse to justify whooping kids. But if you want to tune in for this topic, then you will discover that God might just be a gentle parent. He might just be a gentle parent. He might be against, provoking kids to anger. He might be against toxic parenting. He might just be against a lot of the ways that we parent our kids. The goal is to explain, how would God design parenthood? How would God have parenthood function? So that way, that verse, train a child in the way that they must go so they'll never depart from it, is actually the reality of us when we become adults. I've been kind of getting into the idea of childhood trauma and, what it's like for development to be stunted, and what it's like, for the mind to, while the body has aged, right, the mind may not have. And that's the reality for some people. And as I get into my 30-year-old awakening, it's it's just dawning on me that, when God designed parenthood, he designed it to function a certain way. So that way the result, the outcome of your upbringing, like how you raise your kids, will produce his intention for an adult life, right? And I'm just excited. But anyway, we're making these for Fridays at the Spot for our Mother's Day craft. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And these are the type of things that you can get into when you just need something for your hands to do. And if you want something special to help celebrate Mother's Day at the Creative Spot, we're all about creative community, creative solutions, creative connections, and creative wellness. And so this is one of those creative connections and creative community projects where you can come, get you a cozy spot in the activity room, gather up your materials. I actually just got the stuff off Amazon. I don't have that many purple ones left. That's okay. I would do a flower of 4 petals, right? Because I don't have enough to make 5. I try to film at a better time of day so I can stop losing daylight, but that's just the clouds going in front of the sun. So hopefully the sun will come back out, because I would rather it be sunny. But it's okay. If not, sun can do what they want to do. Clouds can do what they want to do, because they're not mine. They're God's. That's God's. This is my art. These little felt flowers, fluffy flowers, and God's art is the real stuff out there. So, shade it is. currently. I just think that if more people had access to arts experiences, then our community would be a mentally and emotionally and socially healthier community. I should have counted these before I started, because I don't really want just 4 petals. I want 5 at least. What do I want to do? I don't know. But anyway, these are the kind of things that if you're up late at night, right, and your mind is racing and you need your hands to do something to distract you from what's troubling your mind, you can get a craft out. And if you're a believer like me, you can get a craft out and talk to God while you craft. It's so fun because when I was making like the few examples that are on the table here, it made me wonder, like, when God was designing nature, when he was designing flowers, I wonder about the level of intricacy that went into God creating stuff. I mean, this craft, is pretty simple and it can get intricate. I've seen really cool examples on TikTok, and they're so pretty. They're so pretty. I they make great gifts, and it's just really cool to see people make this beautiful stuff from their hands. But like when God was designing flowers and when God was designing nature, and he was choosing their colors and he was choosing their shapes and he was choosing their textures and all that type of stuff. Like, I wonder what that was like for him. Don't want to like go rogue and make 2 pink. Yeah, let's do that. We'll make 2 pink petals to make up for the lack of petals that are purple. But yeah, I wonder, and my 30-year-old awakening is really like bursting my bubble and making me come out of naivety, which I'm thankful for. Because, as I go into this series, How Did God Design Parenthood, I'm also going to touch on like what it's like when that design is not somebody's portion, right? Growing up, for me, both of my parents went to church. And not only did they go to church, but like they had a real relationship with the Lord for themselves. And while some kids probably were like forced to go to church or like forced to do religion, my parents just kind of left it up to us to have our own like stance on it. And that's kind of where I find myself now. One of the things that troubles me as I'm in this 30-year-old awakening, I think a lot about like my past. And I think a lot about how when I was younger, I would like in my head I would feel big-headed, I guess. I would feel pride, right? For not having an attitude problem, for, doing good in school, and for being the good girl and the breath of fresh air for my teachers. And, I used to like judge the kids that were bad, like bad, quotation marks for a reason, right? And it, I look back now that I'm an adult, and now that I see the adult world for what it is, those kids probably didn't have the most present parents, right? Probably. They probably didn't have the most, loving and caring parents, right? And they probably had to endure a lot at home, to the point where the only place they could release the anger and the frustration and the wrath and the negativity that was brewing in them at home, they could release it at school. It isn't fair, right? It isn't fair for me to puff myself up and say I'm this, I'm that, and I don't know why it's so hard for everyone else. I don't know why it's so hard for everyone else. I can do it. I can keep my head on straight. I don't have an attitude problem. Why does everyone else struggle in ways I don't struggle? That's that naivety for real. And I feel bad, because like, people don't ask for their struggles. People don't ask for the parents that they're given. And it just isn't fair to expect a child to overcome their environment, right? I mean, you see it at school, in schools, and any place where there's young people around, right? I had an intern. I asked her, and this was after, I asked her this after the youth violence prevention town hall. And I asked her, what's something adults can do, or what's something adults do that, like, make us problematic, or what's something we can do better to make us less problematic. And she responded with, I wish adults were better listeners, and I wish adults would stop forcing their trauma on us. And it was like in that message that she sent me that I realized that a lot of people have lives and childhoods that when they become older, right, it's really hard to shake what your childhood did to you. While you're trying to heal and while you're trying to grow and process what your life was, here comes the next set of kids, right? And so now where's the time for you to process? Where's the time for you to, look back at your life, to look back at your childhood and just process that, One of the blessings of this marriage right now is the space to have hard conversations. He and I were talking, me and my husband were talking, and we were talking about how we've cultivated a marriage that can nurture hard feelings, right? We've cultivated a marriage that can make a space for hard feelings. And it's so funny because, I'm a gentle parent. I gentle parent because whoopings, in fact, do cause trauma, which we'll get into during this series. But also because I want my kids to have the equipment that I didn't have growing up, right? And that's not to like down my parents. That's not to like, wish they were different, right? We all wish the past was different, but I gentle parent because gentle parenting, from what I've discovered, is the parenting style that allows for proper brain development, proper emotional intelligence to develop, and proper mental health to be the portion of the child, right? And so, my kids, they watch Miss Rachel all the time. And she's got this song. It goes, big feelings are okay. It's okay to have big feelings. Big feelings are okay. I'm here to stay with your big feelings. I'm not afraid of your big feelings. And it's interesting because, my daughter right now, she is expressing herself in ways that I never would have at her age. Oh, there go my son back there. I put him down for a nap like an hour and some ago, and he's still in there playing, so he probably crying because he want to get out. But my daughter is expressing herself. Oh, I like the different colors. I didn't think I would. My daughter is expressing herself in ways that I would have never done back then. She says stuff like, I'm so frustrated and I'm so mad. And then we do the deep breaths. And, throughout their childhood, I haven't whooped them. I haven't hit them to discipline them. And what I find fascinating is, my son, he's 2. And when he would get mad about stuff, he used to hit his head real hard on the walls and the floors, and it would be alarming, right? And so you don't want to hit him in response, right? Because he already hitting himself. But I'm wonder if he'll fall asleep eventually. But now, whenever he's frustrated, he'll clap his hands to release the frustration instead of harming himself. And it's interesting giving them this kind of childhood and giving them this kind of household that allows them to express themselves in this way. And look, I'm not a parent expert, right? I don't know like the ins and outs of everything coming, when it comes to parenthood, but like I know a little bit. I took a human growth and development class in undergrad for my associate program, and it was so fascinating. One of the one of the parts that I remember that stuck with me was the emerging adulthood period. The emerging adulthood period is from 18 to 25. That is the period where the brain is neurologically shifting from a child brain to an adult brain. And the thing about trauma is that traumatic situations can impact that process to the point where you're not developing like you should be. And so when I think about what my intern told me about, adults need to stop forcing their trauma onto the kids, he ain't been asleep. I put him in there like at 140. But, when it comes to the adults, like not pushing their trauma onto the kids, that is the reality for a lot of kids. They're being raised by traumatized adults, and they're being raised by overwhelmed adults, and they're being raised by people who weren't given a chance to process their own childhoods, right? It's like this backup is happening. If you remember that episode of Drake and Josh when they were doing the sushi bar restaurant, and the conveyor belt started off slow, right? And they could like sort the pieces of sushi into the what's that, containers that they had. But after a while, the sushi belt sped up. It was speeding up, and they couldn't keep up with it, and so it turned out to be a mess. And honestly, that's one of my favorite shows. I love that show. But that's essentially what's happening when we think about generational curses, when we think about unresolved trauma. There's loads and loads of unresolved trauma, right? When I get into this series, How Did God Design Parenthood, I hope we can discover God's intention for motherhood, God's intention for fatherhood. We can discover proper gender roles, right? Not the ones that make anyone feel less than the other, but the ones that make each other feel fulfilled in their purpose as parents and in their purpose as partners. And we're going to look into how the enemy can come and disrupt parenthood. And then I want to look at like how God fills the void of an absentee parent. For that, I do hope to like discover someone who would like to talk about that with me, say, hey, this is what it was like when God filled that void for me. Who knows? Might bring them on this show. Might bring them on this show if such a person would like to share their story with us. It's coming together. Oh my God, I didn't think I would like the multiple colors. I'm real ticky when it comes to art. It's got to be right. It's got to be right. But in some cases like this, I'll pivot. And it's adorable. Pink and purple flower. I wonder, like, when we get into this, because I'm really curious how, when I said, not irresponsibly curious, right? Considering how delicate that topic is, but I wonder what it's like, or I wonder what kind of insecurities come from an absentee parent, and not maliciously, of course. That would be rude and irresponsible. When I think about the plight of our city, St. Louis, and I think about the trauma that this city faces, there are a lot of single moms in this city, a lot of absent dads, and then of course, the flip side can be true also. Single dad, absent mom. And it just makes me wonder, like, what is that doing to us? What is the reality of an absentee parent actually doing to St. Louis as it pertains to God's intention for parenthood. If God designed parenthood to be shared, right? If God designed parenthood for a man and a woman to raise a kid together, then what are the spiritual implications of that design not functioning how it should? And then, as God is the artist, what does he do when the design fails, right? It's interesting, I thought I was going to have 6 petals. I thought I was going to have 6 purple petals, but I didn't have enough purple pipe cleaners, and so I had to pivot and use pink. Now, these ones up here, right, I counted the I had enough, and they look exactly how I had envisioned for them to look. But this one, it took a different turn, and it's still so gorgeous, And I'm, as I'm sitting here, I'm just wondering, like, if that's what it's like for parents and for people who deal with the reality of an absentee parent. Like, life may not have been what you expected it to, but it can still turn out so gorgeous, right? The authors mixer has 12 authors signed up, and I am so, so excited. I can't wait to hear everyone's stories and to meet everyone and to just, hear the voices of our city. Like, I love St. Louis. It's an interesting place, interesting place, interesting people, but at the end of the day, this is my city. It's my people. And I just want to love on y'all. So, when it comes to this art stuff, me doing the creative spot and the Giving Art campaign and Fridays at the Spot and the authors mixer and, all that stuff, I really just want to create a space where art is accessible and creativity is accessible. Because we know that access to art and access to creativity and access to an outlet like that is actually beneficial to the individual, which is beneficial to families and households, which is beneficial to neighborhoods, which is beneficial to communities, which is beneficial to societies, which is beneficial to nations, which is beneficial to the world. So, power of one, like Israel's talking about, one, power of one, joining the hundreds of millions of people believing in one. But I think he was talking about Jesus. All the people believing in Jesus. Sometimes when I do this, the flower tape act funny, and I be having to finagle. But I think that's good enough. But yeah, like, come to the creative spot. Like, the creative spot is for anyone seeking a third place for creativity and wellness, right? The county seems to have experienced somewhat of a boom in, well, I wouldn't even say somewhat, but quite the boom in, I didn't make any whatchamacallits. I didn't make any leaves. Let me make those. But there's a boom in art spaces here in the county. There's a lot of art spaces here in the county. I might just take the liberty to find all their websites and all their Facebook pages and put them in the description. It's cool, AI art is on the rise. Speaking of AI, shout out to the No Data Center team who has ensured so far, right, that there will be no data center here in Ferguson. Because we don't need that. We don't need that. And then plus, they would never consider a predominantly white neighborhood a predominantly white town, right? Unless it's St. Charles. But I don't know. It's just strange that they want to put all these data centers here in St. Louis. They already approved the one for where they used to have the armory. Put some more tape right here. Some more glue so it'll actually cover up that spot. But like, I have mixed feelings about AI personally. Because on one hand, I think the technological age is really cool. I think it's really cool that we get to have that kind of technology even today, right? I never would have thought in my day and age that I would see AI be a reality. But at the same time, too, AI is integrated into everything and we cannot opt out, right? As soon as you send a picture on Facebook Messenger, They're asking you if you want to remix it with the AI. And I'm just like, why do it have to be in our face? Why can't we have an option to opt out? And, you can get into your conspiracy theories about why that is, right? Which is another interesting thing to do. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be in heaven when it's all over for me. So we went to go see Hazelwood West Band yesterday. Some of the Hazelwood Northwest Middle School alum are in there. Shout out to them. They were excited to see Mr. Johnson. And that's so cool. They played the Imperial March from Star Wars. Sounded absolutely amazing. And that's one of my favorite songs to hear live. But, I had my son with me. Did my mom thing. Right? Which is another thing. When I think about how did God design parenthood, one of the things I see on TikTok, I call it Loner Mom Church. And Loner Mom Church, these moms, they go to church and they sit out in the hall with their baby and all their diaper bags and all their strollers, or they'll be in the service with their baby with all their diaper bags and all their strollers. And the caption is something along the lines of, no matter what it takes, get to church anyway. Even if your child is rowdy, even if, you have to keep your child with you, even if you have to miss the sermon and walk around and keep your child quiet. And I don't know. I don't know what type of spiritual maturity it takes to do Loner Mom Church. Because in my mind, it's not wrong to attend a church that supports your motherhood, right? That as a woman and as an adult and as someone in the kingdom, it's not wrong to want to go to a church where you can actually pay attention to the sermon, right? I don't know what it is about moms. It's like as soon as you become a mom, paying attention to the sermon, you got to sacrifice it while you're there. But like, what's wrong with streaming church from home and being a mom? What's wrong with selecting a church that has safe and trustworthy childcare? Now, with that being said, of course, God would have the final say for a person's, belonging, right? Some moms might be called to do the loner mom church thing. And some moms might be called to be a light in a place where there's no adequate church, no adequate childcare, right? And if God called you to be somewhere, I think that's the exception, right? But that's if he called you. That's if he said, look, I need you to go somewhere and you're going to experience Loner Mom Church while you're there, right? But if he didn't tell you to do that, you don't have to do that. What I appreciate about this project, God is an Artist, is discovering how God intended for stuff to function. Discovering how God intended life to function, right? And so, God is an Artist podcast. How did God design parenthood? How did God design motherhood? Is motherhood something that's supposed to feel lonely? Is like in terms of like this book here, like would this book reveal that motherhood is supposed to be lonely? Sometimes would this book reveal that motherhood is supposed to be a community? Sometimes, we'll get into the story of Moses' mom, right? Her story is incredible. I would love to hear like a sermon just about Moses' mother, because we read the Bible and we watch Prince of Egypt, one of the best movies of all time. We watch the Prince of Egypt and it's like, can you really imagine being in that situation where this precious being that you carried for 9 months, you now have to trust God? Well, I made 3. I didn't mean to make 3. That's okay. I use them. You got to trust God to carry your baby in a basket down the river. And the water is like threatening your baby's life. Like, how much did she have to trust God in order for that to happen? Right? Was Moses' mother prophetic, perhaps? Did God show her in a dream that, you know, your son is going to be okay. He's going to be, one of my leaders. I'm appointing him as one of my leaders. Did she get that revelation? Or did she have to just trust God and watch Moses' life from afar, right? Oh, try to keep this thing from burning stuff. Moses' mother would definitely get into Mary, right? What was it like for her being Jesus's mom? And it's interesting because in my 30-year-old awakening and in my adulthood faith journey, I'm revisiting these stories with a mature mindset. And so a lot of times people's like perspective and perception of the divine and their perception of Christianity is like from their childhoods, right? They remember that Bible days aesthetic in our old Bible books and Bible Man and BJ's teddy bear Bible stories and all the kid stuff, right? But it's going to be really cool rediscovering God as an adult, rediscovering God with an adult mindset, right? And I'm interested in that. Also, we'll get into the prodigal son story, right? It's interesting, just like I was thinking at the beginning. As a kid, when I used to read that story, I used to wonder. I too used to wonder, like the older brother. Why didn't the older brother get a feast? Why didn't the older brother get celebrated? Right? He's actually doing what he's supposed to do. He's not out there being bad like the prodigal child, and yet when the prodigal child comes home, he gets a feast, right? But it's interesting because that story is one of Jesus's parables describing the kingdom of God and describing God's love for us. I just burned myself on this hot glue. I'm always burning myself on hot glue. Always injuring myself on art supplies and art tools. But it's okay. It's just evidence. I got a burn on my hand. You can't see it from that far, but hot glue gun burn. When someone returns to God, of course he's going to celebrate that. Of course he's going to say, welcome home, versus someone who's been in the kingdom for a long time. Like you know better. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to celebrate that you know better. You already know. There's no redemption happening. So what am I celebrating for? Now that sounds kind of harsh, but we shouldn't expect rewards just because we're doing what we're supposed to be doing in the kingdom of God, right? The reward would probably be like satisfaction for the job that you do. And that's pretty much how it is. Like with this podcast and this project, if this project reaches one person, if this project reaches 10 people, then I've done what I'm supposed to do. If people gain a better understanding of God and Jesus and God's design, right? As he is an intelligent designer, our intelligent designer, then I've done what I'm supposed to do, right? And so how silly would it be of me, like if I was like the prodigal son, the older son, in regards to this project, right? Why aren't I getting a bunch of views? Why aren't I getting a bunch of whatevers? This is good stuff. I mean, it is good stuff. This is good stuff. But like when it comes to matters of the kingdom and matters of the spirit, it's not wise to chase after a great name for yourself. It's more wise to make God's name great in the midst of everything that you're doing and while you're doing anything. And so we'll get into the prodigal son story. I need to discover what else I want to talk about for these next 2 months. But it'll unfold as we go. I kind of gave up on perfection a long time ago. I gave up on perfection a long time ago. Ooh. All right, look, it's coming together. And so after I finish wrapping this up, I'm going to put the blush with this makeup palette. It's okay to have big feelings. Look at that. It's still so pretty, even though I had to pivot, right? And I wonder if God is like that when it comes to our mistakes, right? And when it comes to when we mess up. Because walking out of your child's life is definitely a mess up. Abandoning your child is a mess up. But that mess up, God can still do something with that. God can still make your life beautiful, right? Just like this flower is missing 2 purple petals, I put 2 pink petals instead. So now I'm going to add some little stuff to it. Let's see, I want to just put the same color on all of them. Yeah, we'll do purple for all of them. And once again, if you're interested in coming to the creative spot to make these flowers with me for your mother, for Mother's Day, or for another important lady in your life, then please, please, please feel free to come by. We'd love to have you. The business world is fascinating. You know, I'm thankful for the opportunity to give art to the community, especially since art was a saving grace for me as a young person before. As a young person, like I'm not still young. I'm still young. I still got some youth. But like art was a saving grace for me in elementary school. We moved around a lot when I was younger, as my parents, still trying to find themselves as people, right? And that caused me to I went to 6 different elementary schools in my elementary life. So I didn't get a chance to stick around anywhere for real. But in those times and in those days, art class was really that place for me. And so it's my hope that as I do this art stuff, giving art campaign, Fridays at the Spot, the creative spot, Kwanzaa, all the art things, it is my hope that others are blessed in the same way that I was blessed as a kid. And then my ultimate hope, obviously, is for Jesus to be revealed to someone, for someone to say, you know what? I think he's starting to make sense to me now. I think I'm ready to give him a try, right? I don't believe in forcing people to join the faith. I don't believe in coercing people. I don't believe in manipulating people. I just don't think it takes all that, because God is the one who encounters people. God is the one who arrests people in their time, right? But, please feel free to come to the creative spot, make you a fluffy flower for Mother's Day. For yourself, I'm going to have some greeting cards available too, or making greeting cards for your mom for Mother's Day. This turned out so pretty. That is so fun. I wasn't sure if I was going to like the other pink, the pink petals, but it's different. I hope when I get to heaven, I get to ask God to see his little sketchbooks up there. And I get to ask God to see his blueprints. Let me see how you design the earth. Let me see how you drew it out. Let me see how you design cells and atoms and all the microscopic stuff. He's so good. He's so good to us. He's good at what he does. And I just love him. I just love him so much. I'm almost done here. All right, look at that. So there you have it. This is my pivot flower. The flower that caused me to pivot when I realized I didn't have enough purple pipe cleaners. And who knows? Maybe when it comes to our mistakes and when it comes to our mess ups as parents, God comes in and makes it beautiful anyway. That's all I'm going to talk about in this video for Hey May. That's crazy. I've been doing this podcast since the beginning of the year. And I'm grateful to be able to share God with people this way. And I'm just grateful. I'm just ultra grateful for being able to express art, grateful to love on people again, to feel like a loving person again. Grateful to have made it through my own emerging adulthood period. And grateful that I get to pour into other young people. You know, God is good. And if he can do it for me, he can do it for anyone. Your background and your past does not determine what God can do. If anything, your background and your past can serve as ways to prove just how good God is and all that stuff. So, God is an Artist podcast. How did God design parenthood? We're going to talk about motherhood and fatherhood. And yeah, so tune in for those episodes, tune in for this series, and I will see you in the next video.